The wind howled across the skies of Elysia, the land of eternal magic. Stars shimmered unnaturally bright, their light pulsing as though something ancient was stirring. In the heart of the floating isles, where no mortal dared to tread, Seraphina stood upon a mountaintop of obsidian rock, her fiery wings spread wide. For centuries, she had wandered the cosmos, rising from the ashes each time fate struck her down. She had been slain in wars between gods, devoured by void serpents, drowned in the blackest oceans, yet she had always returned, reborn from flame and fury. This cycle had been her curse and her blessing, an unbreakable loop of destruction and renewal. Yet, for the first time in eons, something had changed. The fire in her soul burned with unease. A presence, one she could not yet name, had begun to pull at the fabric of her very being. It was neither an enemy nor an ally, yet it was something powerful enough to disrupt the very essence of her immortality. At the same time, in the moonlit valley of Nyxara, the eternal fairy stood by the river of stillness, where time itself refused to flow. Unlike Seraphina, she had never known pain, nor had she ever felt the sting of mortality. Wars had raged around her, planets had crumbled, civilizations had turned to dust, but she had remained unchanged. She was beyond death, untouched by suffering. But this had become her curse, an existence without growth, a life without end. Where Seraphina had experienced every death imaginable, Nyxara had never known a single one. A whisper passed through the void. A call, ancient and unrelenting. Two immortal forces were being drawn together. The moment had come. Seraphina's flames flickered as she looked towards the sky. Nyxara's silver eyes shimmered with understanding. They had felt each other's presence. And soon, the battle of eternity would begin. The sky cracked open with a force beyond comprehension as the two immortals converged upon the nexus of eternity, a place where reality folded upon itself, untouched by time. Seraphina descended first, her fiery aura illuminating the abyss. Her golden red hair flowed like molten lava, and her crimson wings radiated unbearable heat. When she landed, the ground beneath her turned to glass, scorched by the intensity of her power. Across from her, Nyxara appeared, stepping out of the shadows with an ethereal grace. Her presence was the opposite of Seraphina's, where the phoenix fairy burned with unstoppable energy. Nyxara radiated nothingness, an existence so stable that the very air refused to shift around her. She was a void of stillness, untouched by the chaos of the universe. The two fairies locked eyes, and in that instant, all of creation seemed to hold its breath. "You are the one I have felt," Seraphina spoke, her voice like crackling embers. "The one who does not perish. And you are the one who has died 1,000 times, Nyxara responded, her voice as smooth as undisturbed water. A long silence stretched between them, not of hesitation, but of understanding. They were opposites in every sense, yet bound by the same paradox. "Why are we here?" Nyxara asked finally. Seraphina clenched her fists, feeling the fire of destiny surge within her veins. "Because fate has decided that we must fight." A gust of wind roared through the nexus as the words were spoken. The battle had begun before either of them had even lifted a hand. The first strike came not from hesitation, but from inevitability. Seraphina surged forward, her fists wreathed in golden fire. The very air trembled under the force of her attack, a blow that had felled celestial titans and shattered starships. But the moment her flames touched Nyxara's form, they simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no resistance. It was as if the fire had never been there at all. Seraphina's eyes widened in shock. She had fought gods, monsters, and creatures beyond mortal comprehension, but never had she seen an entity that simply refused to be affected. Nyxara tilted her head, as though considering something. "Your fire does not reach me," she said, stepping forward. "Because I do not burn." Seraphina gritted her teeth. If fire was useless, she would use force. She leapt into the air, wings propelling her forward, and struck with all the might of a collapsing star. The mountains beneath them shattered from the impact, the land splitting apart, yet Nyxara remained standing, untouched. Seraphina staggered back, breathless for the first time in her existence. "What are you?" she whispered. Nyxara reached out a hand, and for the first time, Seraphina felt something cold creep through her veins. Not ice, not shadow, something beyond existence itself. "You and I are different, Phoenix Fairy," Nyxara said. "You are meant to die and be reborn. I have never died, and that is why you can never defeat me." Seraphina's flames burned brighter, but for the first time, she felt doubt. Could she truly win against something that had never known death? The battle had only just begun. And already, she was losing. The battlefield of the Nexus of Eternity was no ordinary place. It existed beyond the flow of time, beyond the reach of gods, beyond the limits of the known universe. It was a realm that could hold the clash of two immortal forces without crumbling. Serafina's flames flickered wildly as she stood face to face with Nyxara. The Phoenix Fairy had fought countless battles, but none had left her so shaken. No matter how fiercely she attacked, Nyxara remained completely untouched. It was as if her very existence was separate from the forces that governed reality. Serafina took a deep breath, steadying herself. If raw power was ineffective, she needed a new approach. She lifted her hands, and her wings unfurled, sending a burning shockwave through the air. "Fire is not my only weapon," she said, her eyes narrowing. With a single motion, she reached into the very essence of the Nexus and called upon its ancient energies. The ground beneath them cracked, and pillars of molten light erupted, spiraling toward Nyxara with unrelenting force. The entire dimension trembled as reality itself was pulled into the Phoenix Fairy's flames. For the first time, Nyxara reacted. She stepped back. Serafina's heart pounded. "You can be moved," she murmured. "That means you can be beaten." Nyxara looked at her with an unreadable expression. "You misunderstand," she said. "I did not move out of fear. I moved because I was curious." The flames surged, wrapping around Nyxara like living serpents, but they did not consume her. They wove around her body, flickering wildly, but they could not find anything to burn. It was as if she existed beyond the reach of destruction itself. Then, she walked through the inferno. Serafina staggered back, her eyes wide. No being had ever withstood the full force of her divine fire, not gods, not demons, not even celestial titans. Yet Nyxara stood before her, untouched, unaffected, unchanged. "You do not understand your opponent," Nyxara said, her voice calm. "You are a force of renewal, not true destruction. Your flames burn everything down, only for it to be rebuilt. That is your nature. But I am different." She reached out, her fingers brushing against Serafina's shoulder. A cold sensation flooded through Serafina's body, not the cold of ice, but the cold of stillness. It was the absence of fire, the absence of movement, the absence of time itself. "I do not burn," Nyxara whispered. "Because I have never been meant to break." Serafina gasped, her flames flickering wildly. For the first time in her eternal existence, she felt something terrifying, a force she could not overpower. Nyxara did not attack, she simply waited. Serafina's flames surged once more, but this time, there was hesitation. For the first time in her life, she was uncertain if she could win. The battlefield lay in ruins. The sky above them had split into endless colors, the ground beneath them had melted into an ocean of fire, and yet, Nyxara stood untouched. Serafina's chest heaved, her flames growing weaker. She had never fought this long without victory. She had never faced an enemy who did not fall. Nyxara watched her with unreadable eyes. "You are growing tired," she observed. Serafina clenched her fists. "I do not tire," she spat. "I rise. Always." Nyxara tilted her head. "Then rise again." Serafina roared, igniting herself in a self-consuming firestorm. Her body disintegrated into embers, reducing her form to pure energy, reshaping, reforming, rebirthing in a pillar of light. She emerged once more, her body renewed, her power restored. Nyxara watched with curiosity. "You are truly something fascinating," she admitted. Serafina's flames flared violently. "And yet, you still stand." Nyxara finally moved. Not an attack, not an evasion, but something unexpected. She lowered her hands. "I have watched eternity pass," she said. "I have existed beyond wars, beyond the rise and fall of civilizations, beyond the limits of time. But I have never fought before. Because I have never had a reason to." Serafina narrowed her eyes. "And now," Nyxara's expression darkened. "Now, I wonder what it would be like to die." Serafina froze. The words sent a shiver through her very core. Nyxara stepped forward. "I have never been hurt," she said, her voice quiet. "I have never known pain. I have never perished. You die and are reborn, over and over, but I have never changed." Serafina's heart pounded. She had spent eternity fearing death. But Nyxara feared that she would never die. The thought sent a new kind of terror through Serafina's mind. This battle was no longer about winning or losing. It was about the price of immortality itself. For the first time, Serafina saw something fragile in Nyxara's expression. She had spent eternity seeking ways to survive. But Nyxara had spent eternity wondering what it would be like to end. "You," Serafina whispered, You are trapped in eternity, aren't you? Nyxara did not answer. Serafina's flames dimmed. I was afraid of losing my life. But you have never had a life to lose. Nyxara's fingers twitched. What is it like? She asked softly. Serafina's breath caught. What? Nyxara looked at her, something unreadable in her gaze. To die. Serafina had no answer. She had feared death. She had fought against it. She had burned, drowned, shattered, been torn apart by time itself, but she had never truly stayed dead. For the first time, she wondered what it would mean to never have that choice. Nyxara stepped closer. I cannot die, not because I am strong, but because the universe will not let me. Serafina finally understood. She had always believed immortality was a blessing. But for Nyxara, it was a curse. The battle had not been a battle at all. It had been a lesson. Serafina's flames faded. Nyxara's stillness remained. But something had changed between them. You do not want to win, Serafina said. You want to lose. Nyxara's eyes gleamed with something unreadable. Perhaps. Serafina swallowed. I cannot kill you. Nyxara nodded. And I cannot fall. A silence stretched between them. Then what happens now? Serafina asked. Nyxara looked to the sky. Now, we wait for eternity to decide. Serafina exhaled slowly. For the first time, she did not rise to fight. For the first time, she simply stood. And for the first time in history, the battle ended without a victor. The Phoenix Fairy who always died and the Eternal Fairy who never did had fought. But in the end, they had found something far greater than victory. They had found understanding. For what was immortality, if it was only an endless, lonely existence?